I'm going to write down some keywords on the board here just so we can kind of get a big picture of what everyone said. I think we don't have a ton of people that I think we can go kind of one by one if you're willing to just share out loud with everybody what your definition of leadership is. And we'll start over here with you. Yes.
Okay, I just put that leadership is somebody being able to lead the best way they can, and not just by telling, but helping and guiding and doing it yourself, and being able to engage and influence people in the right way.
Okay, not telling, but helping. I like that. And then I heard engaging. Okay, I like that. Okay, how about you?
Basically the same as hers.
Okay, awesome.
I also had leadership is helping others, that's visibility, not always putting yourself first, knowing like you are in charge, but when all like working together to reach a common goal.
I like that. And I like that. I'm going to kind of say in charge, but not first. Does that kind of summarize that? And then I like how you talked about a common goal. So we'll put that there. Okay, how about you?
I just basically said the same thing. I said leadership is working with others to achieve a common goal. And then I also said oftentimes leadership is learning when to follow.
Ooh, I'm going to put following. Okay.
Learning to use bravely while using your unique qualities to transform your relationships within a group or organization for the greater good.
Okay, transforming and I heard greater good. Okay.
I basically put it like not being afraid to work with others, and then when there needs to be a structure, someone's going to be able to take the wheel and go.
So I like that, working with others. Yeah, and I think sometimes we're so afraid of saying things like structure or being in charge when there may be times that is exactly the type of leadership that's needed. So I like that.
I put leaders should be willing to listen to other ideas instead of pushing people to where they personally want.
Listening. That is huge. Listening is actually like 2/3 of the communication process, right? We don't do it enough.
Just kind of what everybody was saying about leadership is like the guidance of the group towards a common goal, kind of working like as an equal but leading when needed.
Let me say leading as an equal. Okay.
Okay, this might sound dumb. It made sense in my head. I said leadership is the process of communicating your thoughts amongst others and seeing others' thoughts to see if there's something that you could be doing to lead others around you better.
I like that. So 2 words that I heard process. So I like that you said that. And then I'm kind of trying to think of a word to summarize at first I was thinking of collaboration, but I think what you're describing was getting feedback. Do you feel like that's a big piece? Okay.
The influence of relationships and engagement between others among leaders and followers that achieve benefits for everyone.
I like that. So I think 2 keywords to pull out of yours: influence and relationships. Okay, we'll start in the back. Oh, don't want to miss you. There we go.
Leadership is the way you show others how to overcome or influence a situation and define themselves as an individual.
Oh, I like that. I like how you have overcome. So are you thinking about like helping people get over obstacles?
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
Leadership is choosing to use your influence to empower others to their full potential.
Oh, Empower. It's one of my favorite words.
I wrote, leadership is a relationship between two or more individuals who influence and/or engage each other in meeting a common goal.
I like that. I'm going to put the fact that you said two or more people, because that could be an interesting conversation.
Leadership is setting the bar for your peers by showing what you expect of them by showing yourself.
Yeah. Role model? Can I think of that?
Leadership is the motivation of others to make a difference and lead others to achieve a common goal for the good.
You're the first person that said motivation. So is it okay if I write that word down?
Mine's probably really stupid, but I put leadership is the guiding and directing of others, and kind of like what everyone else said, knowing when to step in, knowing when to listen.
I like that you said guiding and directing, because to me that kind of gives that room that it could be different things depending on what's needed. Okay.
I said leadership is to lead others through passion and love, to encourage others and help reach a common goal.
Passion and love. Now we're getting some good words. Passion. Love.
Okay, I said leadership is a relationship and process that requires open-mindedness and mutual goals amongst the group.
Ooh, I like that. Open-minded. And I'm going to just put the word mutual, because we do have common goal, but I think I like that word mutual as well. So it's interesting, on Tuesday, we looked at 6 different definitions of leadership, and we really kind of talked about how those definitions, there's not a right, there's not a wrong, they all come from different perspectives. And so even as a class, you all had very different definitions of leadership. But I think when we step back and we look at the board, all of these words can describe leadership in some way. One thing that I kind of want to talk about a little bit is this idea of 2 or more people. How many of you think you can be a leader without having followers? Okay, why do you think so?
I don't know. You don't necessarily have to have followers to be considered a leader. You could be doing things in your daily life that can be considered leadership roles without having anyone to notice.
Mm-hmm. What would you add to that?
I think that, I don't know how I want to word it. I think every day you're a leader, you just don't always realize it. And so you might have followers, but you just don't realize it. And then she's stepping up, willing to be a leader every day.
Now, for those that didn't raise your hand, why do you think there does need to be 2 or more people? Why do you have to have followers in order for there to be a leader?
The book kind of touched on this, like talking about how like it's a mutual benefit relationship between like the leader and the follower. So I don't know, and I think of leadership like I think of it as like a action. So like with a group or other people because they both play an important role.
Mm-hmm. So it's interesting. The reason why I liked that this was brought up is I went to a leadership workshop. It was like a 4-day long thing for faculty who teach leadership. So all these people there that study it, teach it all the time, right? And the first question they ask is, all right, if you think leadership doesn't need followers, I want you on this side of the room. If you think it does require followers, get on this side of the room. I assumed everybody was going to be on this side. There was like half of the room. And it became this like hour-long debate. I mean, of course, that's kind of what faculty do, right? They argue. But I had never really thought about that do I have to lead myself? Do you have to lead yourself? Sometimes. I don't know. It was just something that made me think differently. Again, I still kind of in that camp that it's got to involve other people. But it did make me think more about that individual responsibility of what does it mean to lead yourself well. That was just something I hadn't really thought about before. I like too that you brought up this, a lot of people brought up this idea of being role models and not just telling people what to do, but helping them, being engaged and involved. I also like this, I really like the greater good. So that ties in, for me, some aspect of morality to it. And there will definitely be a point during the semester that we talk about why morality is important when we talk about leadership. So I want to provide for y'all kind of the textbook definition that we're going to be using for leadership this semester. And just kind of as a heads up, these slides will be posted in Canvas, but what I don't want you to do is if we post them before class, don't print them out and bring them to class. I would rather y'all come to class with a clean piece of paper and not necessarily stress about taking notes of what's on the slide, because again, you can go home and print those off. But take notes of the conversation that we have, the examples that people use. Those are things that when you get ready to study for the quizzes, study for the exam, are going to help you remember how to apply these concepts. So, and what you'll also find is that in the slides, sometimes I provide more information for y'all than what we necessarily go over in class. My goal is to really take what I consider to be the key things and us take deep dives into that rather than trying to go through 30 different slides. To me, some of the stuff is so straightforward that I'm like, okay, if y'all read it in the book, read it, study it in the slides, I think y'all can get it on your own. My hope here in the time that we spend together is that this is more of a chance for us to turn mud into clean water. All right. So with that, you probably came across this definition when you were reading chapter 1. Leadership is a process whereby an individual influences a group of individuals to achieve a common goal. There's not a whole lot that I would say, hey, you need to memorize this exact definition. But I do think for this class, this is a definition that you need to know. I'm not saying that it is the best definition of leadership by any means, but it is the one that we're going to use to kind of help guide us throughout this whole semester. What are some of the key words that y'all can pick out of this particular definition? Influences. So, once you have that definition written down, circle that word influence. One of the things that word is implying is maybe perhaps there's some type of relationship, right? Because is someone going to influence you that you don't respect or trust or know? Probably not, right? Like you might listen to them, but it goes in one ear, out the other. So influence is a key word there. What's another one?
Common goal.
Common goal, yes. So y'all brought that up in your own definitions. A common goal, a mutual goal. It is making the assumption that whatever these group of people are doing, they've already decided what it is they're working towards. And it's almost as if leadership doesn't happen unless there's action to it, right? There's something you're working towards. We consider different people leaders because they're doing something, right? They're making a difference. They're influencing somehow. The group has a task that they're needing to accomplish, whatever it may be. We don't just consider someone a leader or study their leadership style just because they're kind of going day by day throughout life, do we? Not often, okay? Another key word. Process. Process is huge, and y'all brought that up. It is looking at leadership, that word, as a process. And what that means is that we're not going to just focus on the leader. So we're not going to just study who the person is. We're going to start looking at, okay, what is kind of the phenomenon or the social interactions, the things that are happening. That's what leadership is. It's not some, we'll say, I do leadership development. Really, it should be called leader development sometimes, a lot of those workshops, because really it's focusing so much on an individual person and building some of their capacity that it's not really about leadership. You're not learning a whole lot about interactions with other people and different styles, different approaches to what leadership actually is. So I could get on another soapbox about leadership development too. We'll save that for another day. Any other keywords? Or just something that you think is important to point out?
It does mention group of individuals, kind of like the discussion we just touched on, with the idea of followers and leaders. This one clearly says group.
So I would definitely say this is probably one of my critiques of this definition. This is Nordhaus, the author of the book. This is his definition. It does imply a sense of hierarchy. There's an individual who influences another group of individuals. One thing I do like about that, though, at least how he chose to word it, is he says individuals and he doesn't say leader, followers. But there's still some sense of implied hierarchy that I think we really need to be aware of, because that'll come into play as we talk about some theories throughout this semester. And so that kind of leads us to help us understand where we are going this semester, and we'll come back to this definition a lot. I told you this class could kind of be seen as like a history semi-leadership class, just in the sense that the very first thing we're going to start talking about next week, we're going to talk about things like trait theory and leadership traits, leadership personality types. That's all having to do with the leader itself, right? Very focused on the individual. And then we're going to find out that, hey, not all these questions are answered. And so maybe we need to see, like, okay, does how the person's oriented, are they more task relationship versus task-oriented versus relationship-oriented? Does that influence how they lead other people, and which is better for each situation? We call that styles. And so we're starting to kind of dive into the process a little bit more, but we're still not thinking about other people. It's still about the leader, focused on the leader itself. And then we're going to say, well, that's not solving all our problems either. So now we've got to think about something else. And we start to pull in more variables. And so we start looking at, well, who are our group of individuals? We start to describe the process a little bit more. We start to figure out, how do we even know what the common goal is? And is it possible to even identify that? So really kind of this history lesson of leadership theories is actually us really breaking down and deconstructing this particular definition of leadership. So like I said, I'll kind of point back to that a lot. And I think it's helpful to make that connection throughout the semester. This kind of helps us understand too, again, that definition of what we say, are we studying leaders or are we studying leadership? And the best way to describe that is if we're studying anything that is only focused on the leader itself, things like height, intelligence, are they extroverted or introverted? Are they charismatic or not? And then what about that person makes them influence other people more or less? That is a trait approach, that's a leader approach. But if we're starting to really say, okay, we want to study the interaction between leaders and followers, or an individual and a group of individuals, then we're starting to look at the process of leadership. And that to me is really where some of the fun stuff is. So, leadership versus management. I mentioned to y'all that, it's hard sometimes to separate those two things. But I want to ask y'all, can managers be leaders? Just kind of based off of not necessarily what's up there on the